She died on her wedding day, then returned with a warning. You didn't arrive here by chance. Something deeper brought you. Have you ever felt uneasy before a moment that was supposed to be joyful? Like a shadow passing over sunlight, but no one else seems to notice. There was once a woman who dreamed of her wedding day since she was a child. She imagined the dress, the flowers, the vows whispered under a soft sky. But what she never imagined was that her wedding day would be her last breath. Most people thought it was a tragedy, but for those who understood, it was karma coming home. And this time, she returned to leave a warning. Let me tell you what really happened. Her name was Emily, a woman who believed in fairy tales, but lived in a world that fed her illusions. She was set to marry Daniel, a man whose charm was sharp, whose smile often didn't reach his eyes. But Emily saw what she wanted to see. Because sometimes the heart remembers promises the mind has forgotten. In another life, Emily had been here before. Different dress, different name, but the same lesson. Back then, she had loved a man who vowed forever, while secretly planning her betrayal. On the night of their wedding, as the village celebrated, he disappeared, leaving her to carry both his lies and her shame. She never forgave him, but more tragically, she never forgave herself. That wound, unhealed, followed her across lifetimes. In this life, the stage was set again. Daniel wasn't a bad man, but he was careless with promises. He said, "I love you," too easily. He said, "I'll never hurt you," without pausing to consider. And Emily felt a twinge in her chest every time. A twinge she couldn't explain. The week before the wedding, the dreams returned. She saw herself standing in front of a mirror, but the reflection wouldn't mimic her. It shook its head. It mouthed the words, "Listen to the silence." On the day of the wedding, as her friends laughed and snapped pictures, Emily felt an eerie stillness, as if time was holding its breath. She stepped into the car. The brakes failed. Moments of impact blurred. And in those fleeting seconds between life and death, she saw the reflection in the mirror smile. A sad, knowing smile. As if to say, "This time, you remembered." 3 days after her funeral, Lily, her closest friend, was alone in her apartment. The phone rang. Static. Then, breathing. And a whisper. "Don't marry a man who doesn't look you in the eyes when he promises." The call ended. But Lily's heart knew. It was Emily. As the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, the evildoer suffers here and hereafter. He suffers in both worlds. He suffers and he laments, recalling his impure deeds. Emily's suffering was never about punishment. It was about unfinished lessons. How many of us are living stories we think are new, but they're not? Karma isn't a chain. It's a mirror, reflecting the parts of us we refuse to see. Emily's life wasn't a random tragedy. It was a moment of awakening. Because when patterns are ignored, they loop. When they are remembered, they transform. Sometimes the signs are loud, a betrayal, an accident, a heartbreak. But often they are soft. A subtle discomfort, A hesitation before you say yes. How many of us have walked down paths we knew weren't right, but we were too polite, too afraid, or too hopeful to stop? Emily's return wasn't a ghost story. It was a mirror held up to those who still had time to choose differently. So I ask you, have you ever ignored a whisper because you didn't want to hear its truth? Do you believe that some warnings are sent across lifetimes, hoping this time you'll listen? If this story stirred something within you, if a part of you feels unfinished, you'll be back. Because you're not done with this story, and it's not done with you. The Dharma doesn't shout. It whispers, and it will find you again, in a conversation, in a dream, in the moment you pause before saying, I do. Some echoes can only be heard when you become quiet enough to listen. If this story touched you, leave a word in the comments, even just "don't" peace. Let's build a space of compassion and truth together.